Good evening to everyone. Myself Christabel, Department of English, the Tamil Nadu College, working as assistant professor. Today we are going to see the interesting topic in background to English literature, that is literary movements. So before getting into the topic, I just want to tell you all what is meant by literary movements. What is literary movements? Literary movements is nothing but it will help us to categorize the works of writers, authors, or poets in a particular century in particular theme. So we are going to categorize literary movements will help us to categorize the writers who are writing in the same period and in the same theme. So that is called literary movements, and these literary movements will help us very much to understand the background of the literature, English literature especially. So what are the important literary movements? So here I have given you a list of literary movements. The first one, Cavalier poets, metaphysical poets, romanticism, Gothic novel. In Gothic novel, we have two categories, that is British Gothic novel and American Gothic novel. Both have been started in different centuries in different country. So it also deals with different themes, but the major theme is the same, which is related to ghost or Gothic themes. Next one is Lake Poets, an American Romanticism, Pre-Raphaelites, Transcendentalism, Dark Romanticism, Stream of Consciousness, Modernism, and Postmodernism. Why I didn't give any literary movements which was emerged after postmodernism means it was a completely different era after postmodernism where we started to study about so many things like the paper literary theory and criticism. So that is a different entity. So I don't want to get into that. So I have stopped till postmodernism. So here, the first one. What is a literary movement? I have already told you in a simple manner that it is nothing but it is a same kind of theme which has been dealt with poet or author who has been living or sharing in the same era or in a same period. So here I have given a quote. What is a literary movement? A literary movement is a general term for pieces of literature by different authors, as I've told you, who share a similar impulse for writing in same way, using a same theme. Usually, these authors are considered part of a movement because they have a similar ideas. And next, the first list, Cavalier poets, literary movement, the first literary movement. The term cavalier was first used by anti royalist roundheads as a term of abuse for the wealthier royalist who supports of King Charles I and his son Charles II of England during the English Civil War, the interregnum, and the Restoration. It was later adopted by the royalists themselves. Actually, there is a group of people who is opposing the royalist. So those people used this term cavalier as a derogatory term. It's not to honor them. Actually, it is a derogatory term. But later on, the people who are the royalists have used it in a opposite meaning, which gives honors to them. So that is called cavalier poets. The people, those who are opposing the royals, is called cavalier poets, and they used to write about poem or any kind of writings, any piece of literary writings which is opposing the king Charles I and Charles II. That is called cavalier poets. And next, who are the important cavalier poets? Cavalier poets or members of the aristocracy wrote in the 17th century and supported King Charles I, who was later executed as a result of civil war. Charles I, a connoisseur of the fine arts, supported poets who created the art he craved. So, as I've told you, first it is a derogatory term, but later on it was changed into a honor. So, people, those who are supporting the king, as or changed the term into a honorable one, and they started to produce works about the king. So, those poets are called as cavalier poets. And who are all Cavalier poets? Here I have given you a list of important Cavalier poets alone: Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, Thomas Carew, Sir John Suckling. Next, what is the characteristics of Cavalier poet? Cavalier poetry is different from traditional poem in its subject matter, which means in the theme about what they are dealing with. Usually, the poets used to deal about nature or about it will be dedicated to a person like that. But here it is the second one. It is dedicated to royals. Cavalier poetry aims to express the joy and simple gratification of celebratory things much livelier than the traditional works of their predecessors. The intent of their works was often to promote the crown. Crown means the king, Charles I and his son, Charles II. And Cavalier poets spoke outwardly against the Roundheads, who supported the rebellion of Parliament against the crown. Commonly, held traits certainly exist in Cavalier poetry, in that most forms celebrate beauty, love, nature, sensuality, drinking, good fellowship, honor, and social life. This kind of poetry always embodies an attitude that mirrors cap the arm. Cap the arm is a phrase which was quoted when we talk about characteristics of Cavalier poets. Seize the day, put very little trust in tomorrow, which means the future. Horace Phallus. So this is the quote or theme which they also always deal in Cavalier poetry. Platonic love is also there. It is also one of the Cavalier poets' characteristics. And next, we have metaphysical poets. This is a very interesting literary movement. Why? Because meta means something beyond. Physic means a physical thing, but something these poets always dealt with something which is beyond physical thing. So beyond physical things means what we cannot able to perceive through our five senses. Those things are called something beyond. For example, galaxy, okay, or the universe, the concept of universe, etc. So what these poets have written in metaphysical concept, let me see. It was coined, the word metaphysical word was been coined by Samuel Johnson to describe a loose group of 17th century English poets whose works was categorized by the intensive use of concepts. And Samuel Johnson refers to the beginning of the 17th century, in which there appeared a race of writers that may be termed metaphysical poets in his work Life of Cowley. It gives more emphasis on the spoken rather than lyrical quality of their verse. Lyrical quality is completely different than spoken quality. Lyrical quality will always have a rhyme scheme, and they will be following a particular syllables or structure for a poem which is related to classical way of writing a poem. But conversation means it will be in a everyday daily conversation style, that is called spoken style. Okay, the metaphysical poets followed a spoken style, and here I have quoted characteristics or a definition for metaphysical poem: highly intellectualized poetry marked by broad and ingeniousness conceits, incongruous imagery, complexity and subtlety of thought, frequent use of paradox, and often by deliberate harshness or rigidity of expression. You always find, if you read metaphysical poetry, they will compare the human emotions with unanimated objects, which is not a living being. That is a different concept which they are dealing in their poet. So that's why I told you before itself, this metaphysical poetry, this metaphysical movement is one interesting moment which we will never think as a usual one. Highly, here is a characteristics of metaphysical poetry. Highly intellectualized. So the way they think will be completely different from the normal poem or normal poet. Second one, strange imagery. Third one, frequent use of paradox, contradictions. extremely complicated, aphoristic, and epigrammatic in style, ambiguous, often difficult to understand on the first reading. You have to read it again and again to understand a metaphysical poem. Philosophical in places, always questions science, subtle use of metaphysical concepts. So here I have given you one example, a comparison of two things which would not normally be compared. So, example John Donne's poem, A Valediction Forbidding Mourning. What he will do means John Donne will compare a lover to a compass. So usually nobody will do it. That's why they say it is strange imagery. The characteristics of metaphysical poetry always will be a strange imagery and highly intellectualized, aphoristic, and epigrammatic in style. And next, the main representatives of metaphysical movement. So here I've given you the list of important metaphysical poets: George Chapman, John Donne, George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, Saint Robert Southwell, Thomas Thorane, Henry Wagan, Thomas Carew, Abraham Cowley, so etc. So these were the important poets. That's why I've given you this list alone. You have another list of metaphysical poets also. So what is the difference between cavalier poets and metaphysical poets? Here I've pointed out few things. First one, conversational in style. Next one, complicated style. And themes were love and loyalty. And next one, use of argument, appeals to intellect and emotions. So I've told you in the before slide itself that metaphysical poets always question the science. So they will keep the argument there. So next, elaborative concept, but here metaphorical concept, they will compare. There is so many different comparisons are there. Next, poets. Who are the poets? Robert Herrick, and here George Chapman, Richard Lovelace, here John Donne, here Thomas Carew, here George Herbert, and the last one, Sir John Suckling, and here Andrew Marvell. Next, we are moving on to Romanticism. Romanticism started in the late 18th century and it was goes on till mid of the 19th century. So what is Romanticism? Actually, to understand the theme of Romanticism, you should know the history. In history, where the Industrial Revolution has started. So in Industrial Revolution, people were certain group of people were against the industry and certain group of people were supporting the industry. So the people those who are against the industry were come under this category which is called romantic poets or romantic writers. So romanticism was an artistic, literary and intellectual movement that originated in the second half of the 18th century in Western Europe and gained strength during the industrial revolution. This is why I have told you about industrial revolution, why you should know the history of industrial revolution. It was partly a revolt against aristocratic social and political norms of the age of enlightenment. Age of enlightenment always related to the scientific development and a reaction against the scientific rationalization of nature and was embodied most strongly in the visual arts, music, and literature. So, here I've given a list of characteristics of Romanticism. How romantic poets or romantic works, or what is the kind of theme they have dealt in romantic works. First one focuses on the writer or narrator's emotions and inner world. Second, celebration of nature because they are against the industrialization. So they are celebrating the nature, beauty, and its imagination. Rejection of industrialization and organized religion. Rejection of rationalism and social convention. Idealization of women, children, and rural life. Inclusion of supernatural or mythological elements which supports the tradition, frequent use of personification, interest in the past, emphasis on individual experience of the sublime. So all these are the characteristics of romanticism. And here I've given you Important writers of Romantic period: William Wordsworth, William Blake, Robert Burns, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and John Keats. So, till this, I'm ending my lecture. And next video, we'll be seeing about Gothic novels or Gothic theme of writings in literary movements. Thank you to all.